the public trying to diagnose your kid. You will have the public critter like doing all type of weird stuff. And then why give a book to me like something wrong with my child? You feel what I'm saying? And it's not that oh she's just in and out. She hurt. She responded. No, that was just weird. Straight up. That's the other thing too. One thing about God, one thing about what I know, right, has nothing to do with your guessing.
This didn't start with a fight, a leaked DM, or a courtroom meltdown. This started with a children's book, yes, a children's book, and somehow turned into a digital firestorm that makes the Kardashians look like they're arguing over salad dressing, because the internet woke up one morning, blinked twice, and asked the same question at the same time. Who approved this? Screenshots started flying faster than apology videos. Comment sections went feral. Parents clutched pearls. Critics sharpened pitchforks. And right in the middle of it all sat Chrisean Rock, trending for something nobody saw coming, and an author named Jada suddenly dragged into the spotlight. Like she missed the memo on internet survival. What was supposed to be inspirational allegedly turned controversial overnight. What was marketed as empowerment allegedly got labeled inappropriate. And what should have been quiet promotion allegedly became a loud cultural argument nobody asked for but everyone had opinions about, and just when people thought Chrisean would stay silent, disappear, or let the internet eat her alive, she snapped back, because nobody logged on expecting to argue about a children's book tied to Chrisean Rock. Not after all the chaos she's already survived, not after years of public meltdowns, viral moments, and reality TV level unpredictability. Yet somehow, out of all the scandals people assumed were coming next, this is the one that cracked the algorithm open. It started quietly, which should have been the first red flag. A book promotion here, a supportive comment there, a few reposts. That looked harmless enough. But then screenshots began circulating, not official press releases, not clean marketing graphics, but blurry phone captures, highlighted passages, and cherry-picked lines ripped straight out of context and tossed into comment sections like gasoline on an open flame. And once the internet smelled smoke, it didn't wait for confirmation. It ran. Parents flooded timelines asking if this was appropriate. Critics demanded explanations. Reaction channels suddenly became literary experts overnight. And people who hadn't read a single page were suddenly emotionally invested, like this book personally wronged their bloodline. That's when the whispers turned into accusations. People weren't just questioning the content anymore. They were questioning intent, questioning responsibility, questioning why a public figure already surrounded by controversy would step into children's media without a hazmat suit and a legal team on standby. The narrative shifted fast, because on the internet, context dies first. Chrisean's name trended not for music, not for fights, not for reality TV antics, but for allegedly exposing kids to something critics claimed crossed a line. And whether those claims were fair, exaggerated, or flat out wrong didn't matter anymore. The outrage had already chosen its angle. This wasn't a calm debate. This was outrage theater. The comment sections looked like a courtroom with no judge and unlimited microphones. One side screamed that people were overreacting and clutching pearls like it was a competitive sport. The other side argued that when children are involved, there is no such thing as too dramatic, and floating above all of it was the same question repeating itself in different fonts. How did this even happen? That's where Jada entered the conversation, whether she wanted to or not. Because Jada wasn't just a random name slapped onto the project. She was the author, the creator, the person whose words were now being dissected line by line like a crime scene. Overnight, her name was being searched by people who had never heard of her before, all trying to decide whether she was misunderstood, irresponsible, or being used as a convenient target. And the pressure wasn't subtle. Suddenly, everything about the book was suspicious. The themes, the illustrations, the messaging. People began projecting entire storylines onto a project most of them had only seen fragments of. The internet does this thing where it fills in blanks with imagination, then punishes people for the story it invented. Meanwhile, Chrisean stayed quiet, which only made things louder. Silence online doesn't read as patience. It reads as guilt, avoidance, or plotting, depending on who you ask. Every hour without a response fueled another wave of speculation. Reaction videos multiplied. Think pieces popped up like mushrooms after rain. Memes started circulating. Some funny, some vicious, some so off base they felt like satire, and the comparisons got wild. People said this drama made celebrity scandals look boring. That it felt like a Lifetime movie written by Twitter users with Wi-Fi and too much free time. That if this were a reality show episode, producers would have told everyone to calm down because the script was already unbelievable, but behind the jokes, the tension kept building, because this wasn't just about a book anymore. It was about trust, about boundaries, about whether public figures should be allowed to pivot into children's spaces without scrutiny, and most importantly, about whether outrage culture was protecting kids, or just feeding itself again. Then came the moment that flipped the switch. Chrisean didn't fade out. She didn't issue a vague apology. She didn't post a Notes app statement written by a PR intern who hates their job. She snapped back publicly, emotionally, and unapologetically. Her response didn't sound like someone cornered. It sounded like someone offended. She made it clear she felt misunderstood, that people were twisting narratives, that what was meant to uplift was being dragged through the mud for clicks and clout. And the tone wasn't gentle. It wasn't filtered. It had that familiar Chrisean edge, raw, defensive, and loud enough to make sure nobody missed it. That response split the internet clean down the middle. Supporters rallied behind her, arguing that critics were reaching, exaggerating, and turning nothing into something. They claimed this was another example of people waiting for a reason to attack her, regardless of facts. That if this book were attached to a different name, nobody would have cared. On the other side, critics doubled down. They argued that snapping back didn't answer the real questions. That emotion wasn't explanation. That when children are involved, accountability isn't optional. And right when it looked like this debate couldn't get messier, Jada finally spoke. Not through rumors, not through screenshots, not through third-party commentary. She addressed the situation directly, stepping into a spotlight that had already decided it wanted blood. Her response didn't calm things down, it complicated them, because instead of backing away, she explained her perspective. She framed the project as intentional, thoughtful, and unfairly represented. She suggested that the outrage was fueled by selective outrage and misinformation rather than the full picture. That statement added fuel, not water. Suddenly, people weren't just debating the book. They were debating who they believed more. The author defending her work, or the audience claiming harm. It turned into a cultural tug-of-war where facts, feelings, and internet narratives collided head-on, and the scariest part? Nobody was actually listening anymore. People had already chosen their villains and their victims. The outrage machine had moved past truth and into entertainment. This wasn't about pages or paragraphs anymore. It was about perception. And once perception locks in online, it's nearly impossible to reverse, because now the outrage had a sequel, and sequels always go bigger. The timeline split into factions overnight like a superhero movie with no hero. People weren't just reacting anymore. They were performing. Every take had to be louder, funnier, harsher, and more morally superior than the last. If nuance existed, it got buried under reaction thumbnails and red arrows. Memes started multiplying like they were getting paid per share. Screenshots were remixed. Quotes were turned into punchlines. Entire opinions were built off half a sentence, cropped so aggressively it looked like it went through a paper shredder. And suddenly, everyone became an expert on children's literature, psychology, and morality, all from the comfort of a comment section. Pop culture comparisons went off the rails. People joked that this drama had more twists than a Disney villain origin story. Others said it felt like a reality show crossover nobody asked for, like Sesame Street meets Love and Hip Hop, except everyone's yelling and nobody's reading the actual book. Some claimed the outrage was faker than influencer apology tears. Others insisted this was exactly how scandals start, quietly, then catastrophically. Celebrity reactions poured gasoline on the fire. Not full endorsements. Not detailed breakdowns, but those subtle likes, reposts, and side-eye comments that say everything without saying anything. A repost here suggested support. A cryptic emoji there hinted disagreement. And reaction channels ran with it like it was breaking news from a secret press conference. Every move became evidence. If someone defended Chrisean, critics accused them of ignoring harm. If someone questioned the outrage, they were labeled dismissive. If someone stayed silent, people assumed guilt by association. There was no winning lane, only louder ones. Meanwhile, Chrisean didn't retreat. She leaned in, her tone shifted from defensive to defiant. Less misunderstood and more "you're not about to rewrite my intentions for me." She addressed the noise like someone who's been trending long enough to recognize when outrage stops being about concern and starts being about entertainment, and that rubbed some people the wrong way, because the internet loves accountability as long as it looks humble. Confidence gets interpreted as arrogance. Pushback gets reframed as avoidance. And emotion gets twisted into evidence of wrongdoing. So when Chrisean stood firm instead of folding, critics didn't hear conviction. They heard confirmation. Jada, Dove, on the other hand, found herself in an impossible position. Every explanation she offered was either called sincere or suspicious depending on who was listening. Her attempts to clarify themes were dissected like they were coded messages. Her defense of artistic intent was labeled either thoughtful or tone-deaf. And suddenly, her credibility was on trial in a court that doesn't believe in closing arguments. The outrage evolved into something darker: narrative warfare. One side argued this was a classic internet pile-on, driven by people who never planned to engage honestly. The other side insisted this was accountability culture finally doing its job. Both sides claimed moral high ground. Neither side backed down. Then the think pieces arrived, long threads explaining why this controversy represented a bigger issue. Videos breaking down why this moment symbolized celebrity irresponsibility. Posts declaring this as proof that platforms need stricter boundaries. And just like that, a single book became a symbol for everything people were already angry about. It stopped being personal and started being ideological. Some framed it as censorship versus protection. Others framed it as exploitation versus expression. The arguments weren't even about the same thing anymore, but everyone was yelling like they were, and right when it felt like peak chaos had arrived, the memes went mainstream. TikTok stitched the drama into skits. Twitter turned quotes into reaction images. Instagram Reels summarized weeks of discourse in 30 seconds with dramatic music and sarcastic captions. The outrage wasn't just viral, it was profitable. That's when people started asking the uncomfortable question: was this about concern or clicks? Because the louder this got, the more attention it generated. Reaction channels gained subscribers. Hot takes got boosted. Outrage became content, and content became currency. Suddenly, people who didn't care about the book cared very much about the engagement, and in the middle of it all, the original point got lost. Kids weren't the headline anymore. Intent wasn't the headline anymore. Even the book wasn't the headline anymore. The headline was conflict. And conflict doesn't want resolution. It wants escalation. So every statement got twisted. Every clarification became ammunition. Every attempt at calm was drowned out by the next viral clip promising the truth they don't want you to hear. This drama didn't spiral, it leveled up. By the end of this phase, the internet had turned a creative project into a morality test, a loyalty check, and a full-scale cultural debate. People weren't just watching anymore. They were choosing sides like it was a championship fight, because scandals like this don't just burn hot and fade out. They calcify, they turn into search results, comment receipts, and remember when moments that follow people long after the trending tab moves on. And by the time the dust started settling, everyone involved realized this wasn't a temporary flare-up. This was a permanent footnote. Chrisean walked away from this moment louder, but also more boxed in. Supporters saw her as standing her ground against an internet that never gives her grace. Critics saw her response as proof that controversy keeps finding her because she refuses to change lanes. And neutral observers quietly clocked the pattern, not condemning, not praising, just noting that every pivot she makes somehow ignites a firestorm. That's the curse of visibility. Everything gets amplified. Every move becomes symbolic. Every project turns into a referendum on your character. And this book controversy didn't just question content. It questioned judgment. Brands watch moments like this carefully. Not with outrage, not with emotions, but with calculators. They measure risk. They assess volatility. They ask whether association brings loyalty or liability. And when a debate touches children, those calculations get colder and faster. Chrisean didn't lose her platform. She didn't vanish. But the conversation around her shifted. It stopped being just about chaos and started being about boundaries. That's a subtler consequence, quieter, but heavier. Jada Dove faced a different kind of fallout, because while Chrisean has lived inside controversy long enough to survive it, Jada was introduced to the internet at its loudest. Overnight, her name became searchable alongside accusations, debates, and hot takes she didn't script. For an author, that's a strange legacy to inherit. Some praised her for defending her work without folding. Others accused her of underestimating how ruthless online interpretation can be. And a third group, the most dangerous one, simply reduced her to a character in someone else's scandal, stripping away nuance in favor of narrative. That's how the internet rewrites people. One moment, you're a creator. The next, you're a headline. And headlines don't care about intention. What made this aftermath especially uncomfortable was how unresolved it felt. There was no clear verdict, no universal agreement, no apology that satisfied everyone, no statement that shut the conversation down. Instead, the discourse froze mid-argument, like a paused video with everyone still pointing fingers. Parents who felt uncomfortable didn't suddenly feel reassured. Supporters who felt attacked didn't suddenly feel vindicated. Everyone walked away feeling unheard, which is exactly how internet controversies sustain themselves. And quietly, the outrage machine moved on to the next target. But the residue stayed. Comment sections still bring it up. Reaction channels still reference it as an example. Future projects will be filtered through this moment whether anyone likes it or not. That's the part nobody warns you about. Scandals don't end, they echo. The most revealing outcome wasn't who spoke the loudest, but who benefited. Outrage content spiked. Reaction channels grew. Clips circulated far beyond their original context. People monetized the debate without ever touching the source material. And once again, the internet proved it doesn't need resolution, it needs engagement. Kids were the justification. Conflict was the product. And that's the uncomfortable truth sitting underneath this entire saga. This controversy didn't explode because everyone suddenly cared deeply about children's books. It exploded because it sat at the intersection of celebrity, morality, and spectacle, the holy trinity of viral chaos. Add a polarizing figure, a misunderstood project, and a platform addicted to outrage, and the outcome becomes inevitable. The scariest realization? This won't be the last time something like this happens. As celebrities continue crossing into spaces that demand sensitivity, and as the internet continues rewarding outrage over understanding, these collisions will keep coming. Louder, faster, messier. Chrisean will continue being watched more closely than others doing the same things quietly. Jada Dove will forever be linked to a moment she likely never intended to define her work, and audiences will keep debating after the credits roll, convinced they're on the right side of history. But history, unlike comment sections, takes its time, and it rarely agrees with the loudest voices. What lingers most isn't the screenshots or the memes. It's the reminder that once controversy touches something as emotionally charged as children, there's no clean exit. Only survival, spin, and whatever comes next. And if this saga proved anything, it's that the next headline is already loading, because in this ecosystem, silence is suspicious, explanation is optional, and outrage is always one post away. And now that you've seen how a simple children's book turned into a full-scale internet meltdown, the real question is this: whose side Are you on? Because the comment section is already arguing without you, and trust me, they don't need encouragement, they need direction. So drop your take below. Was this outrage blown way out of proportion? Or did this situation cross a line that never should have been tested in the first place? No safe answers, no fence sitting, say it with your chest. And if this story made you raise an eyebrow, shake your head, or laugh out loud at how fast the internet spirals, then you already know what to do. Smash that like button like it owes you money and just tried to duck the bill. Hit subscribe like you don't want to miss the next scandal loading in real time. Because these stories don't come with warnings, and we drop them as soon as the internet starts whispering. This channel isn't about pretending celebrities live perfect lives. It's about pulling back the curtain when the narrative gets messy. The timelines get weird, and the outrage starts smelling like entertainment. If it's trending, if it's controversial, if people are arguing about it in all caps, it lands here. And don't forget to turn on notifications, because silence never lasts long in this world. Today it's a book. Tomorrow it's a fallout. Next week it's a whole new saga nobody saw coming. Stay locked in. Stay skeptical. Stay entertained, because scandals don't disappear.